on January 3, 2022, in a quiet home in Slaughter, Louisiana, a discovery was made that would later be described as one of the most disturbing cases of prolonged neglect in recent American history. Inside that house lived 36-year-old Lacey Fletcher, a woman diagnosed with autism and severe social anxiety, who was nonverbal and fully dependent on others for care. When emergency responders arrived, they did not find a person simply deceased. They found a body that appeared fused to the couch on which she had been left for years. The coroner would later state that Lacey had effectively become one with the sofa. Her skin had adhered to the fabric. The cushions were soaked with urine and feces. The smell in the room was overwhelming, described as unbearable even for experienced professionals. Beneath the couch, the floor had begun to rot and collapse due to the accumulation of waste over a prolonged period of time. This was not the result of a single failure or a brief lapse in care. It was the end point of years of sustained, systematic neglect. Lacey weighed only 96 pounds, approximately 43 kilograms. Her body showed unmistakable signs of long-term deprivation. She suffered from severe pressure ulcers, some down to the bone, indicating she had remained in the same position for extended periods without movement. There were signs of infection, malnutrition, and extreme muscle atrophy. Medical experts later concluded that these conditions could not have developed overnight or even over months. They were the result of years of inaction. What made the case even more unsettling was the fact that Lacey was not alone in that house. Her parents, Sheila and Clay Fletcher, lived there with her. They were not absent. They were not unreachable. They were physically present throughout the period in which their daughter deteriorated. Records reveal that Lacey had not seen a doctor since 2002. For 20 years, she had received no documented medical care, no routine checkups, no emergency visits, no psychiatric follow-up, nothing. During those 2 decades, her parents did not seek professional help, did not involve social services, and did not arrange long-term care, despite her complete dependence and inability to advocate for herself. Neighbors would later describe the Fletcher family as private, but not reclusive. There were no obvious signs from the outside that something was profoundly wrong inside the home. This is a recurring pattern in cases of severe neglect. Suffering hidden behind closed doors, shielded by familiarity and silence. Investigators quickly determined that Lacey had not been physically restrained in a conventional sense. There were no ropes or chains. Instead, the restraint was neglect itself. She was left in a single place, day after day, year after year, without proper hygiene, without mobility assistance, without medical oversight. Her world narrowed to the dimensions of a couch. Autism, particularly in nonverbal individuals, requires structured care, monitoring, and support. Lacey's diagnosis meant she relied entirely on caregivers to meet even the most basic human needs. Feeding, cleaning, repositioning, healthcare, none of these could be optional. Failure to provide them was not passive. It was active neglect. When the case went before a grand jury, the evidence painted a stark picture. Prosecutors argued that Sheila and Clay Fletcher had a clear duty of care and that their prolonged failure to act directly led to their daughter's death. The grand jury agreed, indicting both parents on charges of second-degree murder. The charge reflected not a single violent act, but a prolonged pattern of behavior that demonstrated extreme indifference to human life. The defense attempted to argue that the parents were overwhelmed, that they lacked resources, and that Lacey resisted care. But medical experts countered that even in cases where individuals resist assistance, caregivers are still legally and ethically obligated to intervene, especially when life-threatening conditions are present. Resistance does not absolve responsibility. In February 2024, after lengthy legal proceedings, Sheila and Clay Fletcher entered pleas of no contest to reduce charges of manslaughter. This meant they did not formally admit guilt, but accepted conviction and sentencing. On March 20th, 2024, both were sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by an additional 5 years of supervised probation. The courtroom was silent, as the sentence was read. There were no dramatic outbursts, no declarations of innocence, no emotional speeches. The facts spoke for themselves. A woman had lived and died in conditions that no human being should ever endure. Lacey Fletcher's death forced uncomfortable questions into the public conversation. How does such extreme neglect go unnoticed for so long? Where do the boundaries lie between private family life and societal responsibility? How many vulnerable individuals are living in similar conditions, unseen and unheard? Experts in disability advocacy emphasize that this case was not just about criminal liability, but systemic failure. Families caring for disabled adults often face isolation, burnout, and inadequate support. But these factors, while real, do not excuse abandonment. They highlight the need for intervention, oversight, and accessible resources. There's also the issue of invisibility. Lacey was nonverbal. She could not call for help. She could not describe her suffering. Her silence was not consent, but it became a shield behind which neglect was allowed to continue. This is why mandatory reporting laws exist, and why regular medical and social check-ins are critical for dependent individuals. The image that remained with investigators was not just the physical condition of the room, but the idea of time passing. Seasons changed, years passed, and Lacey remained in the same place, deteriorating slowly, her existence shrinking until it was reduced to survival alone. Her death was not sudden. It was prolonged, it was predictable, and it was preventable. Public reaction to the case was swift and intense. Many expressed disbelief that parents could allow such conditions to exist. Others pointed to the broader issue of caregiver mental health and the lack of institutional support. Disability rights organizations stressed that neglect is a form of violence, even when it occurs without overt aggression. Lacey Fletcher's story is now cited in discussions about elder care, disability advocacy, and child and dependent adult protection laws. It serves as a reminder that harm does not always come in the form of physical assault. Sometimes it comes from absence, from neglect, from choosing not to act. In the end, Lacey was not failed by a single moment or a single person. She was failed over and over again, quietly, consistently, and without witnesses. Her life was defined by dependency, but her death exposed a society that too often looks away when care becomes inconvenient. There are no words that can undo what happened to her, but there is meaning in telling her story fully and truthfully, not to sensationalize it, but to ensure it is not forgotten. Because behind every closed door, there may be someone just as vulnerable, waiting for someone to notice. Lacey Fletcher deserved care. She deserved dignity. She deserved to be seen. And the fact that she was not remains a responsibility shared far beyond the walls of a single house in Louisiana.